Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to our webinar, Demystifying Car Sharing in the Twin Cities. My name is John Barbs. I'm the Senior Outreach Manager for Move Minneapolis, the nonprofit downtown transportation management organization. And before we start the webinar, just a little housekeeping, a few items. Please note this webinar is being recorded. That recording will be available to you on YouTube, on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. And the slide deck will be available in a follow-up email that will be going out in the next day or so for everybody who is registered. Please use the Q&A function to submit questions to the panelists and not the chat function. The panel will be responding to those questions at the end of the presentation during the Q&A time, which will be about 15 minutes. During the presentation, we will also post links in the chat function whenever we'll have reference material. Next slide, please. And here you see an image of our mighty staff. Who is Move Minneapolis? Well, we are a small but mighty organization. Move Minneapolis is a program of the Minneapolis Regional Chamber located in the skyway level of the Young Quinlan Building in downtown Minneapolis. And you can visit our newly refreshed website at moveminneapolis.org. That link will be put into chat. Next slide, please. As a transportation management organization for downtown Minneapolis, our mission is to improve air quality and reduce congestion, which we accomplish by promoting alternatives to drive-alone commutes. We connect with downtown commuters and employers and transportation resources on biking, walking, transit, carpool, vanpool, car share, and telework. We also focus on a reduction of vehicles miles traveled, or VMT. Move Minneapolis connects the resources to empower people to choose sustainable transportation options through education, outreach, and by reducing barriers. And here you can see a couple of images of some event work, both outdoor at a biking group ride, and also we do plenty of tabling at all types of employer events. Next slide, please. So a little synopsis of what we do in this image, again, on another group ride, and then some more tabling. We do lots of that. We work with downtown employers to develop commuter benefits and options to meet the needs of their organization and employees. Move Minneapolis coordinates with the transportation service providers and organizations to find the best solutions for programs for employers, commuters, residents, and downtown visitors. Move Minneapolis offers webinars, presentations, lunch and learns, workshops, and all kinds of things to offer guidance on commuting options, policies, and best practices in transportation. Our services and resources are available at no cost. And to learn more, you can certainly subscribe to our e-newsletter, and there'll be a link put into chat. It's a monthly e-newsletter where we update what's happening in transportation in the Twin Cities and different events and things of that nature that you'd be able to attend. Next slide, please. For individuals who would like assistance with commuting sustainably, Move Minneapolis offers no-cost customized consultations for those who live, work, or visit downtown Minneapolis. Customized consultations, and it's a program run by my colleague, Catherine Windick, and she's the person that is behind the scenes today running the PowerPoint. She provides a free 15-minute consultation where you'll be able to talk through your circumstances, preferences, plan your trips, and this is all at no cost. Sessions are available to be booked through staff members, and they take place Fridays between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. And we can certainly make exceptions and schedule other times if that is not available to you. Next slide, please. So here's a image or slide that features our panel. This webinar is called Demystifying Car Sharing in the Twin Cities, and that's a very fitting title. Car sharing was launched 20 years ago in the Twin Cities by the nonprofit organization HOURCAR. It was the very first nonprofit car share in the United States at the time. Other national car sharing companies like Zipcar and Car2Go entered into our market, but never really quite took off. You may recall seeing the smart cars, which were part of the Car2Go fleet, and they faded out about 6 or 7 years ago in our market. So right now, the leaders are HOURCAR and Evie in the Twin Cities. With a strong focus on our community, HOURCAR and Evie have grown in both members and their vehicle fleets to serve the Minneapolis and St. Paul cities. In 2005, shared mobility was a totally new concept, and I kept hearing things like, oh, this is just short-term car rental. Well, kind of, but it's so much more than that. An HOURCAR member can reserve a vehicle in their neighborhood for short trips. You have access to a car when you need one, but unlike car ownership, you don't have car payments, insurance, fuel, or maintenance costs. When your trip is done, somebody else can use the same car. A single vehicle gets used by many people each day instead of many car owners driving many cars throughout the day. And yes, there is a membership fee and there is a charge for using the cars, but it's a teeny fraction compared to car ownership. So following on the heels of HOURCAR in the shared mobility world, Nice Ride was introduced. You may recall them. They brought bike share to the Twin Cities. Since then, we've become more familiar with app-based e-bike and scooter share, which is also shared mobility, and they've certainly expanded both in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. So let's skip to our panel. Today on our panel, we have HOURCAR member Nathan Bakken, who will share about his multimodal transportation lifestyle, and we'll hear from Lindsey Johansen, a construction and development coordinator who has incorporated HOURCAR into a new housing project for the residents who live there. The full panel will join us shortly, but first I'd like to introduce Zoe Green, who is going to tell us about how Carshare works in the Twin Cities. Zoe is an engagement associate at HOURCAR working to promote equitable and sustainable transportation for the Twin Cities. A 2003 graduate in environmental studies at the University of Oregon, she's passionate about environmental justice and the intersection of climate, transportation, and health. I'm happy to welcome Zoe Green from HOURCAR.
Hi everyone. Thank you, John, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for being here today. I also want to extend my gratitude for Catherine, who's working behind the scenes today, and to our panelists who have graciously taken time to share their experience with Carshare. As John said, my name is Zoe. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm going to be walking us through who we are here at HOURCAR and the basics of car sharing in the Twin Cities. Pictured here is one of our electric hour cars in front of Maya Commons, an apartment building that's part of our multifamily electric vehicle car share pilot project. And so let's get started. Next slide, please. To give an outline of what we'll be covering today, I'll start by giving an introduction to car sharing and the nonprofit Hour Car, and then we'll explore the two types of car sharing services that we offer. Our Car, our hub-based fleet, and EV Car Share, a free float service, along with specifics on becoming a member and how to get started with using these services. And then I want to take some time to talk about our car's business accounts, which is a good alternative to traditional fleet management for businesses and orgs. And then before we wrap up with the session, with our panel discussion and Q&A, I'll share a bit about their multifamily electric vehicle car share pilot project that we've been working on the past few years to expand our electric hub-based fleet. And so by the end, I hope you have a clear understanding of how car share works and how it can best fit your transportation needs. Next slide, please. So starting off with a quick review of what car sharing is, especially for those who may be new to the concept. Car share is a type of shared mobility that allows you to rent a vehicle for just the time that you need, where you pay only for the time you use the vehicle. It's typically more flexible than traditional car rental. It's ideal for those short trips like getting to the grocery store or going to a doctor's appointment or just getting around town without long-term commitment to having a car. So here we have an image of an EV car share vehicle with a member using an EV spot network charger off to the side. The convenience of these chargers around the metro, coupled with the flexibility of car sharing, makes it a great option for anyone who's looking to reduce their reliance on a personal vehicle. Next slide, please. So now that we covered some of the basics, let me introduce HOURCAR. HOURCAR is a local nonprofit car share organization that has been operating in the Twin Cities since 2005 to provide more transportation options to residents. HOURCAR's mission is to connect people to their communities with convenient, equitable, and sustainable multimodal transportation. HOURCAR is also a membership-based service with cars placed at hubs across the Twin Cities metro area that members can use for up to 3 days at a time, as well as being a way to drive yourself without the hassle and expense of car ownership, as we cover the cost of insurance, recharging or refueling vehicles, and car maintenance, all while providing 24/7 member support. Next slide, please. So we operate two car sharing models in the Twin Cities, HOURCAR and Evie Car Share, and one membership grants you access to these two services. So the HOURCAR fleet is round trip and hub-based, meaning that vehicles are parked at designated parking spaces or hubs, and you'll return the car to the same place you got it from. The HOURCAR fleet is comprised of over 50 vehicles with a combination of gas, hybrid, and electric vehicles in a variety of vehicle types. The service has been operating since 2005. Pictured here is one of our HOURCAR vehicles and a overview location of all the hubs that we offer in the metro area. Next slide, please. Here is an image that gives us a closer look at the HOURCAR hubs in downtown Minneapolis. So whether you're running errands or heading to a work meeting, you're never too far from a hub. You'll also notice the little lightning bolts that some of the hubs have on their markers. These are electric vehicles. We have a few downtown, one of them being at Intersect in the North Loop, an apartment complex that's part of our multifamily project. Later in the session, Lindsey will share more about Intersect's experience having car share at their building. But for now, I'll transition into introducing Evie Car Share. Evie is a newer service to the Twin Cities, operating as a one-way, free-floating model of car share, meaning that you can pick up a vehicle in one location, use it for a trip, and drop it off in a separate location within our Evie home area. Vehicles are found throughout the 35 square mile home area and are parked at legal, regular on-street parking spaces. We often equate this model to the electric bike and scooter shares in the city. And this fleet is currently made up of around 170 all-electric vehicles since it launched in 2022. And again, EV Car Share, you can access through the same membership as HOURCAR, and you get access to these two services. EV is the largest renewably powered, municipally owned car share in North America. And pictured on the slide is one of our vehicles. EV Car Share is made up of a fleet of both Chevy Bolts and Nissan Leafs. And we also have an image on this slide showing the map of that home area. Next slide, please. So if you're curious about the cost savings of car share versus owning a personal vehicle, based on findings from our upcoming 2024 impact report, we found that the AAA reported in their 2024 Your Driving Cost Study that the average cost per year for a new vehicle was about $12,297. Given the late UCLA planning professor Donald Shoup's findings that the average vehicle sits idle for about 95% of the time, vehicle ownership costs over $28 per hour when it's used. Compared to the mobility plans that HOURCAR offers, the average driver saves over half the cost of vehicle ownership by using our services. and we've estimated that's a cost savings of $6,150 per year per vehicle shed. Factoring in additional cost from using transportation modes such as walking, biking, and transit, households can save even more compared to owning a vehicle. And as we continue through the details, you may be wondering about pricing. For up-to-date pricing and rates, you can visit evcarshare.com/rates/compare, and that link is in the chat. Our services are membership-based, meaning that you pay a monthly fee for the access to the vehicles. And while there is separate rates for the time that you're actually using the vehicle, you don't need to worry about additional costs such as insurance, maintenance, and parking. Next slide, please. So some specifics on becoming a member. You can become a member either online at our HOURCAR or Evie Carshare website or our Evie Carshare smartphone app. Guidelines for membership include having an email address, phone number, and an online payment method. This could either be a debit, credit, or prepaid card. Members also need to have a valid driver's license and be at least 18 years or older with at least 1 year of valid driving experience. We accept out-of-state and international licenses. And members are also required to have no major traffic violations within the past 3 years and none related to drugs or alcohol within the past 7. There is a $15 registration fee or a $1 fee if you're applying with our Access plan, which is a self-certifying income-based plan. But once you've submitted your application to become a member, it typically takes 1 to 3 business days for your application to get approved. Next slide, please. So getting started with using the Evie Carshare smartphone app, it is the easiest way to use both services. Trip reservations can be made on the app. However, our cars can be reserved on our website or over the phone, and EV Carshare trips can be made on the phone with our member services team. So getting started, these screenshots depict what you'll first see when wanting to reserve a vehicle, with EV Carshare on the left and our car on the right. You get access to both of these in the app, and up at the top, you're able to toggle between the two. The app also has the functionality to show you where your closest available vehicle is. And when you tap the vehicle you'd like to reserve, the app will show you its distance from you and will give you the option to get directions. For our cars, you can reserve a car for up to 6 months in advance for the specific date and time that you need, while our cars can be reserved on demand, giving you 15 minutes after selecting a car to travel to the vehicle before beginning your trip. You'll not be charged for making a reservation, nor for that 15-minute travel buffer for getting to an EV Carshare vehicle. Next slide, please. For starting a trip, after arriving to your vehicle, you can unlock it directly through the app by selecting Start Trip, shown by these screenshots from the app. Alternatively, you can link a Metro Transit Go-To card to start trips and unlock and lock vehicles. We've got a little illustration of the Go-To card and the card reader that you would find on the driver's side windshield. It's important to note, however, that trip costs for EV Carshare and Our Car cannot be charged to a Go-To card. Once you're inside the vehicle, you would either push to start the vehicle or access the car key from the glove box to begin your trip. And during your trip, if you make a stop, say you get to the grocery store or your work event and you want to hold on to the vehicle, you'll park it like normal and then either select Pause Trip in the app or quickly tap your Metro Transit Go-To card on the card reader to lock it. Next slide, please. So when you're finishing a trip, the process again depends on if you're an Our Car or an EV. You'll return the Our Car to the hub where you picked it up, plugging it into charge if it's electric, so it's ready for the next person. Pictured on the right is an example of one of our electric hubs. Or if you took an EV vehicle, you'll finish your trip in the home area at any legal on-street parking space. If you park at a city meter with a 2-hour or greater limit, shown by this sign here, we'll cover the cost with no need for you to pay the meter. And then when you can complete your trip either in the app by selecting End Trip, the button shown here on the slide, or by holding your Go-To card to the card reader to lock the vehicle. I also want to add that while it's not required, if you end your trip with an EV vehicle charging at any of our EV Spot Network chargers, you will receive a $4 drive credit that you can use for a future trip. Okay, so that was pretty information heavy, so thank you for sticking with me. I know we covered a lot about how Carshare works in the specifics, but we're going to switch gears and talk more about our business accounts. Next slide. So this is a very valuable resource for businesses and orgs. If you're a company or organization looking for transportation options for your employees, volunteers, or members, HOURCAR offers the ability to create an admin account that allows for the grouping of multiple people under the same payment structure. This is a great solution for those looking for an alternative to owning a fleet of vehicles without the overhead cost of fleet management, as you get the access to vehicles as needed without the cost and responsibility of maintaining your own fleet. Account admins can remove members, track usage, and manage and review reservations if they choose to, which can be helpful if you need to take a look back at where your team went last month or someone had an emergency service call. And a link will be dropped in chat if you're curious to learn more about our business accounts. And this is a helpful resource for business trips, internship, or volunteer travel, as you get the flexibility and access to hundreds of vehicles when it's needed for a few minutes up to 3 days at a time. Next slide, please. So now, turning to a project I'm excited to share more about, our car's multifamily electric vehicle car share pilot project, a title that when we refer to, we simplify as the multifamily project. This launched in 2022 with funding in part by the Met Council, and the project is designed to prioritize affordable, sustainable electric mobility options to residents in historically underserved and low-income communities. By introducing 50 vehicles that are all electric to the HOURCAR fleet, we nearly doubled the number of vehicles that we offer, and we're addressing two key barriers that often prevent communities from embracing electric vehicles, which is the high upfront cost of those vehicles and the lack of charging infrastructure in multifamily housing. This initiative also contributes to the broader effort to reduce emissions and improve air quality in our communities. And as a little plug, we are actively seeking applications from property owners and developers who are interested in bringing these benefits to their community. A link can be found in chat if you're interested to learn more. And we encourage you to reach out and learn more if you want to participate. Next slide, please. And here's just a closer look at our specific multifamily hub locations. This initiative is really spread out into the entering suburbs, as we have locations in Richfield, Bloomington, St. Louis Park, and Little Canada. And later this month, we are doing a launch celebration in Hopkins for a new site. As you may notice, some of the locations on this map have a gray marker, and that just means that those are hubs that we're in the process of launching. But this project is a big step in making electric mobility more accessible, equitable, and impactful, and we're excited to continue expanding our efforts and see lasting benefits for our communities. Next slide. And with that, I want to thank you all again so much for being here. If you have any questions about the services, I'm looking forward to answering them in the Q&A, but for now, I'll let John lead us through the panel of discussion.
Great. Next slide, please. Thank you, Zoe. Well, that was a very comprehensive explanation of the inner workings of HOURCAR and Evie. I'm excited you mentioned about Hopkins. I live in Hopkins, so I'll be watching for when that car does get installed. Now let's hear from our panel on their experiences with car sharing. And just a reminder, we have time for your questions following the panel discussion. If you have a question, and there are a couple, please put that into the Q&A section, and then we'll get to those. But in the meantime, I'm going to introduce, I've mentioned Nathan Bakken before, but now I'm going to talk about him a little bit more in depth. He is a member and a big fan of HOURCAR, longtime user of HOURCAR. Nathan graduated from the University of Minnesota with a degree in urban studies. He works at Metro Transit as a transit information coordinator, overseeing the production of customer-facing information tools like the pocket schedules, the schedule displays, and real-time signs. He's an avid public transit user living in North Loop, and the North Loop boasts some of the best transit options available. And so when public transit is not an option, HOURCAR or Evie helps fill those gaps. Lindsey Johansen is a construction and development coordinator with 14 years at Crowe companies and 19 years experience in the industry. Crowe is a real estate development, construction, and acquisition firm based in Minneapolis that's driven by a philosophy founded on the principles that developers, cities, and its residents must all play a fundamental role in cultivating livable, sustainable communities by investing in thoughtful design, dynamic outdoor spaces, and functional streetscapes. So thank you, panel, for joining us and in our discussion on demystifying car sharing in the Twin Cities. And Catherine, can you open it up to our panel here? And we will start our discussion with a question poised to Lindsey. Lindsey, can you tell us about the housing project that Crowe Companies developed and incorporated car sharing as one of its features?
Yes, thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. And Zoe also, the program is wonderful. And we developed the Intersect, which opened last March. It's in the North Loop area. And it's one of our second major developments as a company. And in the North Loop, we really see it as a true walkable and livable community. And part of being able to provide communities that people want to live in, like the North Loop, you have to take away some of those obstacles. And one of the biggest obstacles of a resident in the North Loop is parking and the cost associated with it. The transition between your home and your vehicle, in addition to where your car is and all of the things that you want to enjoy in your neighborhood. So we thought that cooperating and working with HOURCAR would give our residents an opportunity to live in an area that they might not naturally have if they live somewhere else. And through that effort, we think that sustainability and car sharing is the future of different communities in Minnesota. And while we might be one of the earlier innovators, such as HOURCAR, we think that in the next 5-10 years, you're going to see more use and need for public transportation. One of the other things that we do to provide public transportation or access to our residents is we also provide e-bikes that they can use as they are available. So that's another thing that we do. But what we do with HOURCAR is we provide 2 electric vehicles on our property. We cover the electric for them, and we have an agreement with them to make it available to our residents in addition to the community.
Well, it sounds like this is a really wonderful amenity. Can you share a little bit about any feedback that you've heard from the residents with the access to car sharing and the e-bikes?
So we have 2 residents that we'd like to highlight. One resident lived in St. Louis Park, but that they had a vehicle, and it's really hard to convince residents who have a vehicle to give them up or to create different modes of transportations when you have the freedom of a personal vehicle. So what we did for that resident is we decided to we convinced him to park his vehicle at one of our other properties and to try to use the HOURCAR to see if he'd be willing to give it up. So could he still go to the gym and work and live and go to the store and do all those things by a combination of public transportation, access to the HOURCAR, access to the e-bikes, and just living in a community where you can thrive by foot. And he has successfully done it. He loves it. He uses the HOURCAR all the time, so much so that he was actually willing to give up his car. So we successfully transferred him from a vehicle owner to a non-vehicle owner and a public transportation individual, so that we see that as a success. Our other individual that lives out of state, we convinced her to try some version of using HOURCAR. So she uses multiple modes of public transportation and lives in Wisconsin and in Minnesota. And so what she does is she catches the train into the city. She uses public transportation. When she's here, she uses the HOURCAR, and then she transits back. So while she's not actively using her vehicle in Minnesota, she still has all the privileges and ability that any other resident does. So those are wonderful, because it is very challenging to promote the opportunities that our car can have. And so those success stories are really important to highlight.
So you have the usage, you gave the two examples, which I think are great examples. Does Crowe companies, when they're thinking about like a residential property and the number of parking spaces that are available, and of course, parking, just to create a parking space is very expensive, whether it's a surface lot or whether it's a garage. But does it come into the conversation that by having a multi-use car share vehicle that gets used by different people, that this would reduce the demand or the stress of the number of parking spaces that you need to provide?
Yes, there is a potential for that to happen, and that is definitely a consideration to when you're making decisions for your development purposes and for your future residents. But while the cost may be a factor, that's not the only or largest factor that we considered. In St. Louis Park, we created our first development, and the city does have parking requirements, and we're convinced that the future is to move away from private vehicles or have families that have multi-vehicles to reduce that for a number of different reasons. And so we made certain decisions there. When we started our project in the North Loop at the intersect, we kept those same values and concepts, and we thought that that would be even a better opportunity to have our residents have equitable living conditions, and that you can give somebody who may not have the same financial opportunities or obligations the same privileges that somebody who does have the freedom of a vehicle has. So while it was a consideration, it's not our primary factor. We really think that allowing people to have different types of freedoms and to convince them and or show them that there are opportunities out there that they might not be aware of naturally or organically, that we can create and promote environments that share those concepts and values. And so we're really proud of our residents who have taken the risk and to transition. We're proud of the individuals in the neighborhood who also choose to access the vehicles on the property, because it gives everybody a better living environment, including the few less cars that are in the area, and access to the bike ramps and enjoying the beautiful weather and the nature and all the wonderful things that we are lucky to have.
Well, okay, this is really good information, both from a company philosophy and from the resident's perspective. Let's get the perspective of a user, that would be Nathan. And Nathan, if you can share with us, how long have you been using HOURCAR and Evie, and how did you decide to become a member?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Nathan Bakken, use he, him pronouns. I just want to state also that while I work for Metro Transit, I am speaking on my own behalf as a user of these services. But I've been using Carshare for a long time, like even before I realized HOURCAR and Evie were in the Twin Cities Metro, because I didn't realize that they have been here since 2005. I think I started using Car2Go back in like 2014, because when I was in college, I got a job at a gas station and I had to be there at 4 a.m. in the morning. And I lived in Northeast Minneapolis, and the local bus route to get me downtown and across over to Southeast Minneapolis just wouldn't work on transit that early in the morning. So Car2Go was kind of a lifesaver for me at that point. But I've been using HOURCAR and Evie, I think, since 2016 when the Car2Go left the market. If I remember correctly, my husband was a user, and I joined his account. I think we were doing like at a time, HOURCAR offered like a family account or student account, so we like combined together in one account. And I've been using it since then. Yeah, so for a while, like I guess I would say over 10 years, because I haven't owned a vehicle the entire time I've lived in the Twin Cities since 2012.
Wow, that's impressive. So can you describe a little bit of how HOURCAR and Evie kind of fits into your day-to-day transportation needs? Do you have specific trips that you make on a regular basis? Is it more spontaneous? Obviously you're a user, a multimodal user of all different types of transportation options, including transit. Yeah, maybe speak a little bit more about your regular usage.
Yeah, so I live in the North Loop neighborhood, so we have access to many types of transportation uses, including light rail, bus, our car, and EV. Um, and because I work for Metro Transit, I get public transportation for free. So I try to do most of my trips where possible on Metro Transit. But some just don't make sense, unfortunately. Like when I need to do a Costco run, um, it's not really easy to go to Costco, and like I can take the bus out to Costco in St. Louis Park, but based on the number of things I buy from Costco, it's not super easy to bring it back on a bus. So having an our car and EV in the neighborhood has just made that a lot easier, especially since EV launched in 2022, because there's just more cars available than there used to be. There used to just be the one hub at Sunrise, but now having even just recently the electric charging hub on 6th Avenue and 3rd Street that was added recently also makes it easier to get an EV because there's just generally a demand for it in the North Loop because a lot of people do move to the North Loop as a car light or car free family. Because my apartment building charges like $200 a month for a parking space, and I'm just like, no, thank you. Like, so yeah, I use it for groceries. I use it for trips. Like, I use our car to go home for Christmas. Like, my family lives in Northwest Minnesota. I reserve, like Zoe said, you can reserve it up for up to 3 days. So I'll reserve it for 3 days. You get like, I believe 200 miles a day included. I think I go a little bit over that because like East Grand Forks is a little bit far further than the 200 miles, but it's still much more affordable than renting a car from Avis or Budget or any of those other opportunities. So
Plus, you have the access of picking it up right in your neighborhood as opposed to traveling to the airport or someplace else to get a car rental. That
yes.
makes a lot of sense. I was just going to ask you, what's the furthest that you've ever traveled? And it sounds like it would be up to northwestern Minnesota.
Yeah, I think one time I went to Chicago with it too.
Okay, great. So it provides lots of options, and as you said, it's given a lot of members the opportunity, like let's say if they are a family, maybe go from a 2-car family down to a 1-car family, and use transit and our car to supplement, or in your case, to go down to no car and be able to get around and do everything that you need to do on a day-to-day basis, and supplement your daily chores and tasks with an hour car and EV, if transit is not a quick and easy option right at that moment or right for that trip. That is a great way to put it. Let's open it up to the whole panel. We are really fortunate in the Twin Cities to have good transportation options instead of car ownership. We have great access to transit, carpooling, van pooling, scooter, e-bike share, one of the best bike trails network in the Twin Cities, or in the country, I should say. So kind of giving that whole spectrum, how do you feel car sharing fits in with that transportation modal mix?
I can go. I really think it can like supplement. Like there are times where I need to be somewhere quick and I can hop in an EV, but my journey on the way back can be a little bit like more casual and I can hop on the bus to get back home. Like it's a good way to really like link trips together. Um, so that you're not having to use it in both directions. Like it really, that's the best part about being multimodal is having options.
Have you ever experienced not being able to reserve a vehicle when you needed to?
Yeah, there's been sometimes, like I mentioned before, like the North Loop, there's a lot of demand, especially in downtown for EV. Um, but I have had better chances since the electric charging hub went in near my place. Just because more people are returning that car to that hub to either get that $4 credit or just to charge the vehicles. There's more likely for one to be in my neighborhood. That's a 2 block walk from my apartment. Um, yeah, a couple times, not very often, but usually, yeah.
Lindsay, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in. I think that one of the bigger obstacles are that people aren't really aware of the program and or the locations of the vehicles. So this conversation and access to this information is so valuable. I know that we have 2 hour cars on our property, and it's always we frequently have one vehicle gone, but not the other. And so we have an access. We have access that the community and or the residents can use. And so it's really wonderful to engage people and to have people like Nathan be able to say, well, here's where a popular location is, here's what I do, and gives them an easier point of reference, because the stuff and the access to the vehicles and the information is out there. It's just about sharing it and giving people the opportunity to try it. And we have found that when people try it, they do enjoy it, and it does become a lifestyle. And so there is so much value that our car provides, and Evie by extension. And so it's nice to have the different opportunities, like Nathan mentioned, returning a vehicle to a specific location for an incentivized reason, and or just being able to leave the car at a different location at an approved spot, because that gives personal freedom to enjoy things on different timelines and or access to different areas.
That maybe is a good segue to Zoe, because when you're talking about being introduced to our car and Evie, and and really once you find out about it and learn about the concept, then it starts to click and make sense. Zoe, can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that you introduce our car and Evie to the community?
Yeah. A lot of my work as a community engagement associate is by tabling at events that are put on by community. So we just have a lot of just like general information about Carshare, and oftentimes people that come up to our table are learning about Carshare for the first time. Um, and so I think one of the like biggest hurdles that people are like they have at the front of their mind is like, price. Um, and also just the charging and understanding the range of electric vehicles. Um, but we found that like having our electric vehicles completely outside all the time in Minnesota works completely fine. We do like make back-end adjustments in the apps to make sure that our like range is accurate in the wintertime. But overwhelmingly, we've had positive feedback, and people have found that the cars are easy to drive and pretty intuitive to use. I know that our selection of the EV fleet being Chevy Bolts and Nissan Leafs was done based on community feedback of community members wanting like simple, basic cars that were easy to park and spacious. And so yeah, it's kind of just like led into our decision there.
So kind of the next extension would be, can you talk a little bit about the challenges and the successes that our car and EV is experiencing throughout our communities?
Yeah, I think as we're in our 20th year of operating, we've definitely seen our like fair share of ups and downs as a nonprofit. I think one of the biggest challenges we've faced is the ongoing effort to expand and reach more people, especially people in underserved communities. And like many nonprofits, funding is something that can be tough, but we're committed to keeping our rates affordable while also making sure we have enough resources to make sure that things are sustainable operationally. So it's been a challenge, but it's also something that we've navigated and will continue to navigate. Um, but then we've seen a lot of success in building community partnerships. and having that constant conversation with our community partners that have been able to let us like understand the unique challenges that community members face when accessing transportation, which helps us tailor our services. And that's a strong foundation that we have that we're continuing to see as a core part of our work throughout the next decade.
Nathan, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah. Zoe mentioned affordability. And I think, Zoe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe HOURCAR lobbied the legislature within the last couple of years to change the tax rate on short-term rentals. That's correct, right?
Yeah, nonprofits are exempt from car share or car rental tax that for-profits would be paying. Yeah.
Got it. So, yeah, so that was as a user, that was a welcome change. HOURCAR and Evie used to be taxed like when you looked at the receipt for everything, like a normal car rental uh business, which car rental taxes in the state of Minnesota are relatively high. So you would have your base price and then you'd have the huge tax attached onto it at the end. So when that law changed a couple of years ago, that was a welcome as a user of it, to see that that the state was going to prioritize the cost to be more accessible to people, to use car share, because it's not the same as a regular car rental. Like it is more of a, it's short term. It's meant to be a mobility option for people within the Twin Cities.
Thanks for that, Nathan. It is 12:45 or a little bit after, and we're going to segue into our Q&A time. And we've got time allotted to answer questions from the audience, and we've got several questions, or about a half dozen lined up here. So I'm going to open that up, and if you'd like to add a question, please use the Q&A function. And we will start with, there's a question here about, can you talk a little bit about the access program for low-income individuals? I work with new Americans for whom car purchases can be financially inaccessible, but access to cars is important to get to a job.
Yeah. We offer an access plan, which is a $1 monthly fee. And to qualify for that plan, it's a self-certifying process, so we don't ask for any documentation of income. But it's designed for people that are at or below 50% of the median area income. And it has our lowest minute, hour, and daily rates. So a minute using Evie is about 21 cents, compared to our backup plan that is used for when you're off the service, being about 35 cents. But yeah, we wanted to make it self-certifying so to like reduce barriers for people that need it the most.
Here's a question that's addressed to Lindsey. Of the amenities offered at Intersect, have you found that offering transportation amenities helps set you apart from the others, especially given the competition in the North Loop?
That's a good question. I think that it really depends on the resident. You know, we provide a lot of different opportunities that the residents have at our properties because of things that we find value in. We have a number of different things that we do, and it is up to the residents to really utilize them. Kind of talking about more of in addition to HOURCAR, what our overall goals are for our community and our residents is things such as we have regenerative drive elevators. We do wind source electricity that they can purchase. That's more of an alternative to the regular versions of electricity, and we don't do gas power because we believe that we can create alternative opportunities. It is up to the residents to pick and choose what they want. Some residents love it, some are indifferent. I think that what's important for us is to stick to what we believe and where not only we are now, but where we want to be in the future and where we think that the community will want us to be and what we want to provide for them. And so we will continue to, do outreach programs such as HOURCAR and to provide different different utilizations of transportation and energy and building efficiencies that help promote the community in addition to the individuals that are directly receiving benefit from them.
Great, thank you. Here's another question from somebody who's interested in trucks or vans. Are they part of the HOURCAR or Evie fleet?
So we do have one truck available, and it is at the Creative Enterprise Zone in St. Paul and Midway. That is currently our only truck on our car fleet. And we only have Chevy Bolts and Nissan Leafs in our EV Carshare fleet. So
I do remember once upon a time, I think there were several trucks, but yes, the fleet is always changing and growing. Here's a question for Nathan. Somebody's curious about how much does your trip to Costco cost you?
So I saw that pop up in the Q&A and I went to my billing section in the app. It depends, because I probably, if I'm going to Costco, I'm using an EV or an HOURCAR for an hour to an hour and a half. Probably somewhere between $10 and $15, depending on how long the trip is. And like, if I plan it well enough in advance, HOURCAR is the prices for HOURCAR are a little bit lower than EV, so it just depends on which service you use as well.
Here's a question. This might be geared more towards Lindsey, but Joey, you might want to chime in. If a market rate developer wanted to have an on-site EV parked right outside of their new apartment building, how much would that cost roughly?
So without sharing numbers, we created an agreement with HOURCAR that allowed us to provide the stall. So we work out an agreement where it's a very minimal fee to have the vehicles on our property, but we also cover all of the electric charging at our cost because it's something that we really believe in. And so we use the space at as we need to. There was a situation where in order to get HOURCAR there, we had to wait for their chargers, and we decided that was not going to work within our timeline. And so we invested into providing car chargers at our expense. So, HOURCAR honestly has been really great to work with. We have the 2 cars on site. Sometimes the people that use them put them back exactly how they're expected, and sometimes they come back in different formats, whether they are not charged and or not in the right space or too far out. And the HOURCAR team is fantastic. We can just reach out and within a short amount of time, they can give us access to the vehicle so we can relocate them, or they send somebody out there to help deal with the situation. And so that relationship has made it beneficial and easy. So the convenience is great. It's going to be an individual company's choice on where they want to invest their dollars, and we want to invest it in reasonable energy and to create community spaces that people want to use, and so we're proud to do it.
Zoe, this is a question that you might be able to touch on. Is HOURCAR planning on expanding EV to South Minneapolis? And the person who asked the question said that because of the population density, that they think that there would be a lot of users.
yeah, not currently at this time, expanding into South Minneapolis. We do have an expansion progress that we're currently working on the east side of St. Paul. And we're working on that as funding allows. But that is based on community input. And so as we work towards expanding EV Carshare home area, the community will be a big part of that. So people will know.
Kind of segueing on that, another person asked about East Lake Street being added to the EV zone. So
A similar answer.
again, a high population density area. Here's a person that says, I live in the homeowners association in the Seward neighborhood of Minneapolis. I was interested in multifamily HOURCAR hub, the electric fleet. Can you describe the process we face in offering electrified parking for HOURCAR or EV?
So I am not too involved in the process of getting electric hubs out to folks, but we do have an electric car share hub site development manager who I could connect you with for more information. Um, that is a good question.
And that we will be able to, in our follow-up email to everybody who's attending the webinar, we can include that information with the contact information, so you'd be able to follow up with both HOURCAR and Evie. Here's another question for you, Zoe. When you fob out and are done with a trip, do you have to click the end trip, or does fobbing out do it?
So
They just
fobbing
want
out,
to understand the process.
yeah, I'm assuming with the Metro Transit Go-To card, you do not have to use the app to start and end trips. So you would not have to click end trip. So if you decide to end with a Go-To card, you just hold it to the card reader for a few seconds, longer than just like tapping it to lock it. And then the car will lock, and that will make sure that your trip is ended. And if you have any issues, you can for sure call our member services team to help with any problems with that.
And this, you may have just answered this, but I was just reading a question. Does the Go-To card work equally for both Evie and, yeah?
Yes, and also I see on that question asking if the access plan works for both Evie and HOURCAR. Yes, it does. Evie and HOURCAR do have separate rates, but on our access plan, they are our lowest rates that we offer.
Great. And then there's one more question about cost. I'm assuming that's for usage, about the various plans.
Yeah, so we have multiple plans. I mentioned our backup plan, which has a $0 monthly fee, but our highest rates. Um, so we're looking at like 35 cents per minute that you're using an EV, up to a daily price of a little over $144. But that's when you're not using the service, just so you don't have to pay that monthly fee. But then when you're using like a standard plan, like our everyday plan, the price is a lot lower. Um, and then our access plan with our $10 an hour fee for EV, and then like an 86, a little over $86 for a day.
And here's a question about the number of hours that a vehicle averages in use per day. You had mentioned earlier that a private vehicle is not used on average 95% of the time. But how does that differ with an HOURCAR EV?
Yeah, so our services are available 24/7, and so we see a lot of usage patterns depending on the time of day and the day of the week. On average, our vehicles are taken on about 3 to 5 trips per day per vehicle. And then the highest utilization tends to be during this time of the year, on the weekends when people are taking longer trips, and also during the work week when people are traveling to and from work and running errands. Um, but yeah, it seems like we're in a good spot in terms of like usability and access for when people need vehicles, and making sure that cars are available for people to use.
Great. And as I just glanced at my clock here, I see that we're almost out of time. So that will have to be that last question. We will, as I mentioned, have a follow-up email that'll have lots of links and other information, including a link to our YouTube channel where this presentation will be available. I did want to touch on a couple of other things going on with Move Minneapolis. We are going to have a very active bike month, which is the month of May. Here are some of the events that we have going on, including May 1st, a Fix-It clinic at North Loop Green. We'll have a public group ride, which will be taking place on the 7th of May, and that will be a ride from downtown Minneapolis to Dual Citizen, located in the Midway area of St. Paul and back. And then we are doing a couple of different employer group ride opportunities. We've got one lined up and would like to line up some others. If you work downtown or have a connection with a downtown employer who may be interested in having a mini group ride, mini bike education event, there will be an opportunity to do that, and you can contact our Move Minneapolis for that. But I thank you very much, Zoe, Nathan, and Lindsey, for participating in our webinar. And there were lots of questions. I'm sorry I was not able to get to all of them. But again, we will have some follow-up information for everybody. And thanks once again for joining Move Minneapolis. And we will see you next time.